Good evening.
Peter, do you think that violent criminals, violent bank robbers and murderers should ever be allowed out on day release?
I would have a personal opinion, but the fact is they are allowed out on day release. My personal opinion is that the risk assessment needs to be more robust. There'll be some 700, upwards of 700 life sentence prisoners in our open prisons as we sit here tonight. And obviously, and unfortunately, incidents like this and the one that we had a few weeks ago with prisoner Wheatley undermine the excellent work that is done in open prisons.
Steve, the last figures we have, the last 4 years, show that 204 prisoners absconded from open prisons. It seems that they and day release just aren't working properly.
I think there are two fundamental different issues here. One is the risk assessment process that takes place to establish who should be allowed to go out, and it is supposed to be the lowest risk prisoners. And the second one is the benefit of resettlement and the purpose of resettlement. Everybody, or while 30 prisoners, will be released at some point. So to take away people's opportunity and not to give them that chance to lead a law-abiding life would be very, very detrimental indeed. And I think that's the big difference. And they're two very separate issues, one of risk assessment and one of resettlement purposes.
Well, they've assessed your risk, which is low to non-existent, but you are on licence at the moment. You had to tell your parole officer you were coming here this evening. You're wearing a tag on your ankle, which is beneath your sock. We can't see it. Why does that happen to you? And it didn't happen to a murderer and a violent bank robber?
At the moment, for the purposes of release on a daily licence, prisoners aren't tagged. I know there is various discussions taking place in the Ministry of Justice to consider that. Obviously, that's a bigger project and a slightly separate issue. It's certainly something I would support, personally.
But on the whole, in a word, you think day release is an important part of rehabilitation?
I think it's absolutely critical. I think it's absolutely critical. If you take it away, you're taking away people's chance to know that there is a different option. People largely may have never led a law-abiding life and don't know any different. And if you take away the opportunity to teach people that, you know, as we're trying to do now, then, you know, it's very, very detrimental to the future.
So, Peter, Chris Grayling's bringing forward this look at prison reform. Let's say you were in his shoes with the experience you've got of being a prison officer. What would you do? Well,
I'd refer him to what the National Grid say. If the prison service can provide prisoners at the end of their sentence who are safe and literate, they will employ them. And that's what he's got to look at. Now, the rehabilitation revolution that we were promised was predicated on a reduction in the size of the prison population. That hasn't happened. And I have to say, in the lead up to a general election coming next year, it ain't going to happen.